Good afternoon. You're tuning in to the Health and Wellness Hour right here on the People Station with your favorite gerontologist, Dr. Macy Smith, where we're keeping you connected to the most current and up-to-date information. How many of you are familiar with the new Alzheimer's drug that is designed to treat those in the early stages? I know you are, but today we are joined by Tayler Wilson from the Alzheimer's Association, and she is going to tell us all about what is going on with this new drug. Welcome, Tayler.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So let's jump right into it. Leqembi is the new Alzheimer's drug that's designed to treat the disease in the early stages. Did I get that right?
That's correct. So it is a monoclonal antibody treatment. That's
Okay, now I'm going to need you to break that all the way down.
So the best way that I've been able to explain it, because I myself am not a physician or a researcher, and I'll state that very clearly, but the best way that I've been able to break it down is you have these three specific markers of Alzheimer's where we can tell that that's the disease that's affecting the brain, causing dementia. The first is amyloid plaque.
Yes.
The next is tau tangles, and then because of the plaque and the tangles, we have neurocellular degeneration or cell death. So the brain actually shrinks, and you know this. Well, this is a drug that actually goes after those plaques in the brain, those things that become sticky on the neurons, make it hard for communication to pass between the neurons. It cleans them out of your brain. Sort of like if you're driving in a storm and there's rain on your windshield and you kind of wipe it away and you can see more clearly, it's helping the neurons connect more clearly. So
that's profound too, because back when this all started, well, it's been since the early 1900s, but just research and clinical trials, they didn't know whether or not they could even remove the plaque. And if they remove the plaque, will it remove some of the brain cells? So there's been some advancement with that.
Absolutely, but there's also the caveat of you have to have a conversation with your doctor.
Absolutely.
No matter what, when you're talking about a treatment for any sort of chronic disease, you're going to have to talk to a physician to find out, number one, if you're healthy enough, number two, if this is the correct treatment path for you, number three, if you're going to be able to get access to the diagnostics. So every time we talk about Leqembi, the first step is always, always, always talk to your physician, get a referral to a neurologist, make sure that you're going through the right steps.
Absolutely. So there are some contingencies on this particular drug. Doesn't mean that this drug is going to be applicable to everybody. Let's start with the early stages. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Tayler, I want you to talk about what are the early stages so that people can actually make an appointment to the doctor to be assessed for that. We'll be right back. It's the People Station. Welcome back. You're tuning into the Health and Wellness Hour right here on the People Station. We are here chatting with Ms. Tayler Wilson from the Alzheimer's Association, and we are talking about the new Alzheimer's drug designed to treat the early stages of Alzheimer's. Now, Tayler, before we went to break, we were going to talk about what those early stages look like, because if you don't get to the doctor when you're seeing those early signs, then you may not benefit for the treatment.
Absolutely, and this is one of those things that we'd start talking about very early and a lot earlier than we used to, because what research is showing us now is that sometimes the effects of dementia in your brain may start to build up as soon as 20 years before you show symptoms. So what we're talking about now is mild cognitive impairment and also early stages of dementia. So things that where you start to notice they're affecting your activities of daily living. So it's not about, oh, you know, I can't find my car keys and I know I put them on the dresser.
Yeah, it's more than forgetfulness, more than memory loss.
Absolutely. It's things that are actually starting to affect your life. One man told me that he knew something was significantly wrong when one day he picked up a shoe and had to think about how to put it on.
Yes.
That's
profound.
That's profound. And so when we start talking about this, it's really the first time you notice there's any sort of memory changes that are affecting your daily living, you need to go talk to your doctor. And I always tell folks, 60 years and older, your annual Medicare wellness visit should include a cognitive screening. Ask for it because they're billing for it.
Exactly. And you know, we're going to get you to come back to actually talk about that too, because many people don't understand that. So they recognize early signs, and if you're concerned about it, get to your primary care physician. Now, that's one part of it. Now, what's the other part of potentially receiving this Leqembi treatment?
So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to get a referral from your general practitioner to a neurologist, someone who is equipped to be able to provide this treatment. This treatment is actually intravenous, meaning that it goes in through your veins.
So
It's
is it
not a
like an
pill.
injection?
No, it's actually a drip. And so it takes a while for you to get the infusion. And so you're going to have to find a doctor who can provide the infusion. But prior to that, you're going to need to go in for some diagnostics. So something called PET scans are going to be required to ensure that you actually have Alzheimer's disease. Because remember, this
Or
drug,
a mild cognitive impairment.
or mild cognitive
Okay.
impairment caused by the pathology of Alzheimer's
Right,
disease.
okay.
Because if you don't have the amyloid plaques, which is what this drug treats, getting this drug is not going to help you with your dementia. There are so many forms of dementia. You have to be sure you're treating the right kind.
Okay. Now that's important. This particular drug is for Alzheimer's disease because there are over 100 causes of dementia. That's important. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I want you to talk about some of the potential side effects or risks with this drug. We'll be right back. It's the People Station. Welcome back to the Health and Wellness Hour. We are still here chatting with Ms. Tayler Wilson from the Alzheimer's Association South Carolina chapter, because I don't think I mentioned that earlier. She is with the South Carolina chapter, and we're chatting about the new Alzheimer's drug designed to treat early stages of Alzheimer's disease. So, Tayler, you came in with some extraordinary statistics. Then I want to get to what some of the side effects are. Orangeburg County. What have you recently learned about Orangeburg County within this whole Alzheimer's epidemic?
So what we've realized in newly released data that was released out of Amsterdam, the Netherlands, at the Alzheimer's Association International Conference is that Orangeburg, South Carolina, Orangeburg County has the 8th highest prevalence of dementia in the nation. And so that means that there's a lot of things that we need to consider when providing for support in the community.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things to consider when research opportunities are available. We have three brilliant universities, or two universities and one technical college that could provide opportunities for research in these different,
I'm not going to ask you to say names because you might not say the name that I want you to say, so I'm not even going to ask you to say those names.
But it's a lot of conversations that need to be had with community leaders, and it really starts with folks like you talking about it.
Yeah. What are some of the factors? Because I will tell you that for Orangeburg, South Carolina to be 8th in the top 10 with the highest prevalence of Alzheimer's disease, I mean, on the list with Florida, California, that is alarming. What are some of the contributing factors to that?
So we know there's comorbidities that increase the risk. So any sort of risk in stroke, any sort of risk in diabetes, poor access to healthcare, food deserts, all of those things, rural communities, that all goes into effect. But then also at AAIC in 2022, it was released that racism plays a role in how we see risk for African Americans and Hispanics to be more at risk. So there's a lot of factors. When you remove all of the socioeconomic inequities, there's actually no difference. And so we know that that's a part of it.
I'm glad you said that. Now, there is always fear when something new comes out. When we're talking about Leqembi, the generic is lecanemab. What are some of the potential risks that folks may need to talk to their primary care physician about if they're considering this particular treatment?
Sure. Well, we know all drugs have side effects, and so Leqembi is no different. So what you're going to want to do is make sure you're talking to your doctor before you take the drug about what the potential side effects are and come up with a risk assessment about whether or not you're healthy enough.
Okay.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is, there's going to be different opportunities to look at, is there going to be brain swelling? Is there going to be headache, dizziness, nausea? Again, this is an intravenous application drug, so there's time commitment. Is that going to cause something? But always talk to your doctor. The Alzheimer's Association believes that the side effects that are most common with this drug are manageable.
Now, how can folks reach you, Tayler, and get more information about the new drug and treatment?
alz.org/SC is the chapter page, and you can directly link to the research there. There's also a new drug coming out called donanemab that we're expecting to see FDA approval coming out.
I read that.
So there's a lot of great things. I tell you right now is the most hope in research that I've ever seen in the 9 years I've been a part of the association.
Well, thank you so much for dropping by the People Station and sharing that information with us. Thank you all for joining us. Got to give a shout out to our sponsor, the Orangeburg Senior Helping Center. Their program of all-inclusive care, 803-268-5301. If you want to be a part of the Health and Wellness Hour, WOCS937@gmail.com. That's WOCS93.7@gmail.com. It's the People Station. Thank y'all for staying with us. This is considered the off-air segment of the Health and Wellness Hour, I couldn't let Tayler go without just asking some more pertinent information about, or gathering more pertinent information about resources for South Carolina. We just found out that Orangeburg, South Carolina ranks number 8 on the list when it comes to the prevalence of Alzheimer's disease. I think a little more than 15%. And so, Tayler, what that tells me is that people are hurting. People need help. We often look to the Alzheimer's Association for that help. You guys are the 3rd largest research entity. Is it in the country or in the world?
In the world.
In the world, Craig, the world. And so we do look to you guys for support. Before we get into some of the respite options for folks, I do want to mention to you, because there's been some rumbling, when the other drug came out, the aducanumab, and there was clearly some issues with how that was approved. Many people look to the Alzheimer's Association for, how should we look at this? Is it right? Is it wrong? And you guys supported it. So there was some question, why would the Alzheimer's Association support a drug where there are clearly issues that could potentially cause harm to people? What do you say to that?
So science is really about discourse. It's about having conversations around, this is my data, this is your data. And so we understood and welcomed that discourse. The Alzheimer's Association scientists, Dr. Maria Carrillo, and the entire MedSci team felt that the data that was presented on Aduhelm or aducanumab merited the FDA approval, and the FDA did grant that approval. But again, there's discourse. And so we welcome that. We had multiple conversations, and we're leading that conversation with the FDA, represented information, presented that information at AAIC 2022, the data that was presented to the FDA, to 5,000 scientists that were in attendance. And so they were able to have their discourse as well. It is really how science moves forward. What we want to ensure is that science is always moving forward. At this juncture, we have 6.7 million Americans who have Alzheimer's. That's not including the other types of dementia.
And the ones that are not even diagnosed yet.
Absolutely. And we're seeing, more diagnoses in the early stages and the younger people. And so we really want to make sure that we're pushing science forward. And sometimes that comes from having conversations where scientists don't agree. But we now are moving towards Leqembi. We are seeing the data that came out from Leqembi that just got granted FDA approval. CMS is now agreed to cover
which
all
is huge.
the UMAB drugs. Huge.
And that is Medicare. So for those who are on Medicare, Medicare is going to cover the drug, but only at 80%, because it's still that 20% that's hanging out there. Now, with that 20% that's hanging out there, the price tag is still $400 and some odd dollars. Is there any news on whether or not those who are dually eligible, will Medicaid cover that 20%, or is that coming out of pocket?
So the Alzheimer's Association has every single state policy person, and I know this because I'm the state policy person for South Carolina, working.
You're burning the road up with that too, so we appreciate you.
Working with the Medicaid entity in our state to have Leqembi and all of these drugs placed on the drug preference list so that it can be covered, because we want to ensure that there are no cost barriers, there is no access barrier, there is no barriers to everyone receiving this. When we first started talking to CMS about them not covering this drug.
I remember. I was waiting, I was watching, and then eventually you guys came out and said, hey, this drug is not affordable. So I appreciate that advocacy.
Well, and it was health equity. Because
absolutely.
you were putting a barrier in place. This is not going to be something that's accessible to the people who need it the most. And so the Alzheimer's Association is dedicated to continuing to remove those barriers. So we'll be talking to Medicaid and continuing to have these conversations, because this is not the only drug we're working on. There are 140 therapies right now that are in either phase 2 or phase 3 trials that are going
treat Alzheimer's
to
disease.
Treat a form of dementia, because we want to be able to support people who have Lewy body,
all the types of dementia.
all the other types of dementias. So this is not our only chime that we're going to be advocating for this. It's all forms of dementia, and all people should be having access to this. Our vision is a world without dementia.
There you go. I appreciate you. You wanted to mention before we get out of here about our state Alzheimer's plan.
Our state Alzheimer's plan, we actually have a law in place now that we have an Alzheimer's and related dementia plan required for the state.
And that's ADRD.
And so it's Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. We have to send in a report to the legislature to show how we've improved the lives of people every year. And every 5 years, we have to pull a team together and do an update because we know that science moves fast in this space.
Yeah.
The one thing that didn't get changed when we started drafting this law, though, was respite in South Carolina.
Yeah,
respite
I was going to say.
is never going to go away.
So let me ask you this, and I promise I'm going to let you go after this. Are we holding our legislators accountable for passing bills that's going to funnel down money and funding and support so that way family caregivers can access respite? Because sometimes that's not accessible either due to the financial barrier.
Absolutely. We're working on that right now. We're always looking for increases. What we've done is we've actually changed the way that the respite is distributed. It's actually based on prevalence now instead of just cutting it, based on population, which actually makes a difference because there are people in some communities they're taking care of 2, 3, 4
At
people
the same
at the same
time.
time. And so it wasn't fair for us to cut it based on just population. It needs to be where the pockets of people who have dementia are located and where those caregivers really need the support. So
now, how do they get respite?
So you can go to the Department on Aging and apply through there. What they'll do is they'll send you to their area agency on aging where you live. You can go to getcaresc.com and find out that information. But if you have any concerns, please call the Department on Aging or the Alzheimer's Association and ask the questions so that we can direct you in the right way. There's no reason that any caregiver in South Carolina should be going without respite right now.
Absolutely. Well, Tayler, we thank you and we support you 100%, and let us know how we can help because it's clear we have some work to do here in the Orangeburg area. Thank you guys for staying with us for the 4th segment, the off-air segment of the Health and Wellness Hour. It's the People Station.